Have you been exploring a career in product management and trying to figure out how to make the transition? Are you in the beginning of your journey, or are you a bit frustrated having been stuck multiple times? Well, you're not alone, because tons of people are trying to make the leap into product management, and it is not easy. Take it from me, because I've made the transition myself years ago. Most hiring managers are looking for product managers with 3 to 5 years of experience. But if you don't have experience, how are you going to get the experience? It's a chicken and an egg problem. As a senior product manager in big tech, I've helped several people make the transition into product management and have seen the stories of so many others that I've worked with or even outside of my company make the transition. So do not give up, because it happens all the time and it's totally possible. So in this video, I'm going to lay out the paths to jump into product management, whether you're in college or you're in your early career or in your mid-career. And by the end of the video, you'll be able to come up with a plan for yourself to make the transition into product management. Hey guys, I'm Diana and I'm a senior product manager at a big tech company based out of Silicon Valley, and I bring you the best tips to get into product management and help you succeed once you've made it. And if you're someone, again, looking to make the transition into product manager, you'll want to subscribe to this channel because I'm always sharing interview tips and ways to make the transition. So let's dive in. The product manager role is one of the most sought after roles in the tech industry. No surprise, it's one of the highest paying next to software engineers. And as a product manager, you get to take a leadership role to turn ideas into a product that people use. Traditionally, the product manager role started off in tech companies such as Google, Facebook, Yahoo, Microsoft. But in the recent years, I've seen it explode beyond the tech industry into non-traditional tech companies, like consulting companies such as McKinsey, and even consumer packaged good companies like Land O'Lakes. Yes, that is your butter company, so you better prepare for some high-tech butter. Today, we're going to cover the most common paths to help you transition into product management based on what I've seen and based on how I've helped other people make the transition. I'm going to share the pros, the cons, tips, and resources to better help you make the transition no matter where you are in your career. And at the end, stick around because we even have 3 additional bonus tips that'll better help you make that transition. But before I dive in, I'd love for you to take a couple seconds and comment below. Let me know where you are in your product management journey, and more importantly, what struggles are you going through? Because those might just be the next great idea for our next video. So let's dive in. We're going to start off with those of you who are still in college or about to graduate. Wow, if you're already thinking about a role in product management this early on, hats off to you. Those who I've seen jump into product management right out of college, by their late 20s or their early 30s, I've seen them hit senior product manager roles and even director roles. That's about $500,000 total compensation. So if you have the luxury to start early, I definitely recommend it. And for those who are not in undergrad but are in an MBA program, stick around because later in the video, I'm going to cover this path. For those of you in college, you're quite lucky because companies have created structured programs for college grads. And those are usually called associate product management programs. And I've seen several companies offer these programs for college grads. For example, Groupon, LinkedIn. I've seen Facebook has its rotational product management program. And these programs are especially great because it's kind of like an apprenticeship model. You have a mentor assigned to you who's supposed to handhold you through learning about product management and helping you develop the fundamentals as they coach you. At the same time, you have a pretty well-scoped project to help you develop those skills, so you're practicing what you're learning on the job, which is the best way to learn. And a lot of these programs are rotational programs, which means every 6 months you get to be in a different part of the business building a different product. How exciting is that? I have a good friend who jumped into LinkedIn's associate product management right out of college. And she told me it was such a rewarding experience. One, because you have a cohort of other early out of college PMs with you that are going through the same journey and sharing the same pains. But at the same time, there's such a strong support network. And they bring some of the best product managers or people across the company as speakers. And they go on fun trips. I know for LinkedIn, that class, I believe they went to Shanghai. It's almost like an extension of college. In a few minutes, I'm going to give you a couple resources where you can find out which companies are hiring for associate product managers. But before I do that, let me share some pros and cons with this path. One of the biggest pros with this path is that you're starting early in your product management career. And like I mentioned, I know several people who now in their early 30s are directors at large tech companies because they started early. Another pro is being in these programs, you get a ton of support from more senior product managers. So you don't feel like you have to learn it all by yourself, which can be the case if you're transitioning within your company to be a product manager or transitioning to another company to become a product manager. Because the product manager role is pretty lonely. You're usually the sole product manager managing a team of engineers and designers. So sometimes it might be hard to learn and you always feel like you have to learn on your own or learn as you go. Okay, what are some cons with this path? Well, because this is a role with people with very little experience, there's actually not that many roles that are offered. And hence this makes it uber competitive. What are some tips to help you on this path? So traditionally I've seen, and this might have been years ago, a lot of people who were getting into these associate product manager programs were studying computer science. I don't think this is a requirement anymore. What I've seen more common now, people who get offered these associate product manager roles after they graduate, are if you've had an internship as a product manager before in your, say, junior year or even sophomore year for those of you who are super ambitious, or even just a role in tech. And the last tip is you'll want to spend months preparing for the interviews because that's ultimately what's going to help you get the role or not. Lastly, what are some resources that are going to help you in this process if you're trying to get into an associate product management program? Well, there's a site I came across called apmlist.com, which is great because it shows what associate product management programs are available across multiple companies. So you'll see Capital One, I mentioned Groupon, LinkedIn. It gives you the deadlines. It also gives you how many roles these companies are offering, so you know just how competitive it is. Another more exhaustive resource is a site that was developed by previous associate product managers for future associate product managers. It's called apmmap.com. So I'll have both of those links in the description below. Next, we're going to talk about paths for those who are early or in their mid-career trying to make the transition into product. So the first path I like to talk about are those who joined a product bootcamp and then made the transition into product management. So there are product bootcamps out there like Product School, Product Gym, General Assembly, and BrainStation. And there's a ton more. I'll share that later in the video from a website that shows a holistic list of product bootcamps. These are great courses that help you learn the fundamentals of product management from the principles, from the workflows, so you're really getting a sense of what it's like on the job. At the same time, they're not just teaching you, but they have teachers that are actually product managers at these companies. And these product managers are co-designing the curriculum or customizing it based on their own experience for their students. And I know some friends who are product instructors at Product School, and they're not product instructors for the money. Rather, they're really passionate about teaching the craft of product. So I would say this path is great if you don't currently have product mentors that you can shadow at your own company. Some people might be wondering, what are they going to learn in these courses? So I'm showing an example syllabus from Product School where they teach you the hard skills such as how to A/B test and how to wireframe, but also the soft skills such as how to present, how to lead a team. And then they also prepare you to actually get the job by teaching you how to craft a resume for product and how to interview for specific companies. So I think it's a pretty exhaustive and comprehensive program to optimize you getting the job. Another important component of these programs is they develop a network of alumni who can help you make the leap into product management. And I think this is especially key because a lot of people who are trying to jump into product management might not know anyone who are product managers, might not know anyone at the companies that they're interested in. And in this case, their network aren't just alum who've made successful transitions into become product managers, but they also have a network of their teachers who are senior product managers at these companies who are committed to help people like you make the leap. So now, what are some pros and cons of this path? I would say the biggest pro of this path that's really unique is that you learn the fundamentals of product from a principle standpoint. For example, because I made the transition into product when I was working at my company already, I was sort of thrown in there and having to figure out A/B testing, and I probably looked so foolish in front of my engineers who expected someone that had done this 1,000 times. A con: going through product bootcamps like this does not necessarily guarantee you a job, which might be frustrating because you're spending multiple weeks. Like the average product school program is about 8 weeks, and you're spending thousands of dollars. So to come out of it without being guaranteed a job can be discouraging to some. And to be honest, as a hiring manager, I'm not sure how much I value seeing a course certificate on their resume to give me confidence that they can necessarily do the job. But still, you've seen these product bootcamps successfully help people make the transition, and a lot of great case studies and stories of people who successfully got into some of the bigger tech companies. So the big tip here, if you are going to enroll in one of these programs, is take advantage of the networking. I cannot emphasize it enough. It is so important to build that while you're going through the program. So say you have 8 weeks. Every week, spend that week getting to know, let's say, 3 to 5 product managers who actually work in the industry. That sounds like a lot, but trust me, the more you increase your numbers and your reach, the more it's going to help you then make the connections to maybe help you get a referral into a company, or maybe help you know someone who might be a future hiring manager. And this is going to help you much more than going through the course and applying for product manager roles right off the bat through a job portal. So again, build those relationships with your direct teacher, with other teachers who have profiles that amaze you, and with alum who have successfully made the transition and have gone through the pain and might be pretty motivated to help you also successfully make the transition. Okay, what are some resources to help you on this path? I actually couldn't find a lot of websites that reviewed the different product bootcamps. Hence, if you're choosing between multiple programs and thinking about this path, you'll want to check out the curriculum to, again, check with the product manager and see if it actually reflects the work that's being done at these companies. You'll also want to talk to past alum who have successfully graduated from the program, and maybe even those who didn't successfully make the transition into product to get their opinion. By the way, if this content has been helpful so far, I'd love for you to support the channel by subscribing to the channel if you want to see more content like this, like the video, and if you know someone else that this video might be helpful for, pay it forward and share it with them. All right, let's get back to the video. The second common path that I've seen make the transition into product with very little years of experience or almost no years of experience are those who go into business school to make a career transition. So I had a client of mine who is now a, let's say, senior product leader who was a software engineer early in his career, decided to pursue an MBA, and that was what ultimately helped him make the transition into product management. Nowadays, a lot of these MBA programs actually have courses that support in learning about product management, similar to what we talked about with the product bootcamps. So they have classes like product strategy, marketing, these things that are key to actually becoming a good product manager. So for those who are in an MBA program, you can leverage your summer breaks and do internships in product. And what's helpful here is a lot of these companies will come onto campus to try to recruit you. So there is a great time to build a relationship with the recruiters and product managers at these companies who are asked to represent the company. So what are some pros and cons? So one pro is that, again, you get this formal recruitment process where they've allocated specific number of roles just for MBA grads. The con, we all know business school is expensive. Talk about $150,000 for those 2 years expensive. And sure, the salary you're going to be earning in product management can be used to pay that off, but it's still a hefty price tag, especially compared to, say, the product bootcamps, which are about $3,000 to $5,000 versus $150,000. Of course, in these business schools, you're also building just a great network of people and friendships that are going to be lifelong friendships. So there's all these other benefits beyond just making the career transition. So if you are considering an MBA or you're already in an MBA program, some tips to help you is your colleagues have had previous work experience. So some of them might have been product managers. Some of them might have worked in tech and know product managers. So leverage that. Go find those people, build that network so you can learn from them, or build that network to sort of get your foot into interviewing for a company. A second key tip here is to learn about the interview process from the year class before, who can talk to you about the timelines, how long it took to interview, and maybe even help you mock interview. Because preparing for the product manager interview and the whole process, I would say, is a couple months worth of work, not something that you can wing. Now we're on to our third path, which is transitioning within the company. And this is the path that I ultimately took. And this path is very much possible if your company has product manager roles, has a formal process to make the transition from what role you're in into product management, and that you have a supportive manager that is invested in helping you make the transition. And in my case, all three of those were true, which enabled me to successfully make the transition. It still did take some time. Again, it didn't happen within 3 months. Other things that can give you a leg up to make a successful transition into product management with your own company is if your role intersects with what product managers do, or you have a lot of exposure to a product manager that you work on a regular basis. Some of these roles are like technical program managers, product designers, software engineers, product marketing managers. These are key functions of the product role and usually collaborate tightly with the product managers, where there is some overlap between what the product managers do and what they do. And the exposure itself in one of these roles can help you learn about what product managers do. And at the same time, if you have a really awesome product manager who's willing to give you some of the product work, again, me as a product manager, I'd love if I could delegate some of my work, so don't ask me twice. It is a win-win, and you can use that to then get some mentorship from the product manager while helping the product manager out. And getting to do the work gives you exposure on what the work encompasses of, but also helps you prove to your colleagues that you can do the work, that they then see you as the image of a product manager. Another key component, let's say you have a supportive manager, but there isn't a clear process to transition from your role to a product manager in the company. And that also is really frustrating, because then you're going to have to develop the process on your own, and figuring out this process can be very clunky and time consuming. If your role is further from the product manager role, say in finance, it might be even more difficult to make the transition into product, because you don't have exposure to working with a product leader, you don't necessarily have the network, so you might struggle more. And here, the strategy I've seen some people take is to take a stepping stone. So instead of going directly from the leap of finance into product management, we talked about some of these roles that are more closer to the product management function, the technical program managers, the product designers, software engineers, etc. And you in finance, maybe you have some skills that intersect with the technical program managers, and hence you'll want to make the leap into technical program management for, say, a year, and then that'll make the transition into product management a bit more fluid. because a lot of technical program managers end up taking a lot of the product manager work, especially if there is no product manager. For example, that's where I actually made the transition myself into TPM, technical program management, into product management. Because on some of my projects, I didn't have a product manager. I ended up doing the product management function, which was how I showed and proved to my organization I was able to do the work. So what are the pros and the cons? Well, this could be a much easier path because you might have people that are invested in you who want to help you grow in your career. And hence they have background knowledge on the quality of your work, are then able to support you in making the transition. What are some cons? Well, in a lot of companies, I don't see the transition between roles process to be very clear. So that's why I really emphasize understanding whether there is a formal process to get into product management at your company, and of course, whether there's open roles. And when you do find out the process, sometimes the process itself could be pretty rigorous. Like at some companies, they may require sponsorship from a senior leader or to have you go through rigorous interviews just like an outside candidate might. So truly assess how easy this process is and how long it might take. Because if it takes up a long time, you might consider the next option we're going to talk about, which is making the transition by going to become a product manager at another company. But before we go into that, wanted to share some additional tips on how to make this happen. Some top tips here. If you feel like this process is helpful or you want to explore it a bit, make sure to network with existing product managers at your company. Again, they're the ones that might be able to provide mentorship or let you know of open roles or just give you work that a product manager would do. And that would be my next tip. Try to get PM work so that you can prove to your organization that you can do the work, that you can learn fast, that you can lead a team of engineers, which are all things that they worry about when they want someone to become a product manager. And lastly, get clarity on the transition process. And that way you have an idea, an estimation of how long is this going to take? Am I better off considering other options like the next one we're going to talk about? Or would I rather spend the 2 years that it may take to transition in business school? So that gives you the clarity up front in order to come up with a plan. Now, the fourth path I've seen that happens a lot too are people who become product managers at another company outside of where they're currently working, which means you gotta quit, which is okay because sometimes this path might help you transition in a product much faster than waiting for your company to wake up and realize how awesome you are. As mentioned, a ton of companies are adopting product manager as a role, and hence there's a ton of demand. Though the larger companies like the Googles, Facebooks, they require at least 3 to 5 years because they are the top tech companies, so they can choose from whoever they want and pick the best of the best. But you have the mid-size, smaller companies that might be more willing to take a risk on early product managers who might not have the formal product manager experience, but show that they learn fast and that they have done work that is related with what product managers do. For example, I've had a mentee of mine at my company who was a product specialist, kind of working in product operations. He was trying to make the transition to become a product manager at our company for over 2 years, to no avail. So ultimately, I guided him to say, you want to look beyond the company. And within 6 months, he was able to become a product manager at a smaller company. I would recommend starting with your network. See if you know any product managers who might be willing to identify open roles at their companies, or might be able to talk you through or introduce you to other product managers that might know of something. Start by looking for open roles. Do your own homework first and check on LinkedIn or Indeed what open roles are in which companies. Then check if you have friends who work at one of these companies that you might be able to share your interests and see if they know the hiring manager or see if they can give you some advice on applying. On LinkedIn, sometimes for the job roles, they actually show the recruiter on the job description, so you might be able to reach out to them to express your interest. So what are the pros and cons with this option? Well, because there's a huge battle for talent for product managers, there are a lot of companies that are willing to take on people who are just smart and brilliant, that are coachable, if you're able to show them those things. And a lot of times, put yourself in the shoe of a hiring manager. Sometimes you're trying to hire a product manager and they've waited, let's say 6 months or a year even for that perfect candidate. And you might be able to convince them that you're able to come onto the job and hit the ground running. They don't have to wait for someone who officially has 3 to 5 years of experience. This allows them to compromise a bit, which is your opportunity. Hence why I emphasize build relationships with potential hiring managers and product managers, because you never know who you're going to be able to convince that you wouldn't have otherwise if you just applied through a job portal, through your resume, which blankly just says, I have 0 years of product experience. Versus when you're kind of given the path to actually build that relationship and convey to them and build that trust, they might be more willing to extend a hand out and give you a chance. So what's the con of this path? Well, it might be less predictable to know which companies are willing to compromise and give you that opportunity, which means you're going to have to do a lot more outreach work to increase your pool and hence your chances of actually getting a reply or a chance to interview. And this might be a lot of reach out work and hence a lot of rejection, and people might be discouraged from this very easily. Like the mentee that I took on who transitioned from a product specialist and product operations role, so many times along the path where he reached out to someone who was a product manager at a company, didn't get a reply, we talked and he was totally discouraged. And I had to nudge him along and be like, you can't give up here. This is one rejection. And what matters at the end of the day is you getting that one offer. So my big tip here is build relationships with people who successfully made the transition. Those people are much more empathetic to your cause and might be willing to help you because they know how tough it is. And you can find these people on LinkedIn, look through profiles of people and reach out to them and let them know that just like them, you are in their shoes they were a couple of years ago trying to make the transition and would love their advice. And once they get to know you, they might be willing to tell you about the open PM role at their own company because you never know when the return is going to come. So say you build a relationship with someone and they don't immediately offer you anything, but they might keep you in the back of their mind and 6 months later reach out to you because they thought of you for this open role. So lastly, what resource would I recommend? One of my friends created a great podcast series called The Paths to Product, and she's interviewed tens of people who made that transition successfully, whether within their own companies or from an early college program. Now, as promised, I want to share a couple of bonus tips on how you can successfully make the transition into becoming a product manager. But before I do, if this video has been helpful and insightful so far, take a second to subscribe to the channel because it's going to help us build more content like this for you. Oh yeah, and like the video. So 3 bonus tips that's going to help you make the transition into becoming a product manager in 2022. First bonus tip, I've emphasized that you've heard me say this 1,000 times, network, network, network. I mentioned early on, if you're networking for the purposes of getting some immediate return, then yes, it's going to feel gimmicky. And you're going to be really disappointed. And people are going to be able to tell that you want something. But if you're networking to build relationships and learn from people, that's going to pay back dividends even beyond that immediate reach out. So find people who can support, vouch for you, and keep you encouraged throughout this journey. My second bonus tip is to pursue multiple paths. So after this video, I don't want you to be like, okay, I'm gonna go and get an MBA and that's gonna be my path into product management. Well, you're gonna have to entertain a couple of paths because your plan A might not work out. So you gotta have a plan B, plan C, and sometimes pursue them at the same time because you don't wanna wait a year before you know plan A doesn't work out to then pursue plan B, which means you're gonna end up spending 2 years before you become a product manager. And the third bonus tip I'll give you is while you're preparing to get the job, make sure you're learning about product in the process so that you're constantly building your knowledge because that's gonna help you pass your interviews. That knowledge is going to help you hit the ground running when you get on the job. And also, being a product manager isn't all glorious. So if you're curious about what are some of the not fun parts, or what I like to call sucky parts of being a product manager, check out this video where I talk about why sometimes being a product manager can suck. And if you're beginning in this process of transition in product management and you still don't have a resume that is product manager ready, check out this other video where I talk you through the best ways to craft a resume to target the product manager role. See you guys later.